are. Shelf right.
What is that I see vaguely on the horizon?
Good thumbnail. It'll be a good thumbnail.
Big freaking book haul, mate! Hi guys, it's Win and welcome back to the moment in which I put these down before I break my back. I actually don't entirely know how I'm going to achieve this because now they're the shape of my boobs. Structural stability. Oh. There was but one small casualty. It was my sciatica. Let's try that again, shall we? Hello, welcome in. As a follow-up on the back of my last library reorganisation video, I realised that it has been a while since I did a book haul. Not that long since I did an unhaul. Like a decent amount of time since I showed you any of the stuff that's actually come in. And believe me when I say that that is not only unfun for you guys, because who doesn't love a haul, but it's also ever so slightly inconvenient for me. Because you see, this year so far, I have bought or received 38 books. Because we all like a little statistic around here, I have read 9 of those books, which means that we are 29 books unread, and I think that makes it something like 23% of my 60% goal. And I hate to tell you this, I'm sorry if I'm the first one, but it is nearly 6 months through the year. It's horrifying for a whole host of reasons that we won't get into right now. And I think realistically one of the reasons why I haven't been cracking on a little harder with some of these books is because they have been sitting on my holly trolley waiting for me to show you them. And so it's time to show you all of them. And I thought, in the spirit of keeping this place as like clean, tidy and organised as we can, that I would just bring you once again my unvarnished face and my cleaning attire. Not that this top is only used for cleaning, but you know, it's past the point where I can wear it in public. She needs a wee dick daff. Anyway, yes, unglossed face, slightly dirty clothes, gonna take you around my shelves. And not only are we gonna haul these books, but we're gonna put them away at the same time. But before we do that, I have to introduce you to the partners of today's video, the wonderful people at Brilliant. If you're an OG viewer, then you will know that I have in fact worked with Brilliant in the past, and I am a massive fan. As a neurodivergent individual with a literal clinical lack of calculation skills, Brilliant is one of the only places where I have actually felt fully confident in my skills. Brilliant helps you get smarter every day with thousands of interactive lessons in math, science, data analysis, and loads more. If you're here on my channel, then you're probably already a literature and language buff, which means that you've probably already used similar platforms to Brilliant in order to brush up on your skills. In a structured plan, each lesson is delivered to you in a way that makes you hands-on problem solve in the moment. And it has been proven to be 6 times more effective than any kind of classroom lecture that you can complete. No matter which module you decide to start with Brilliant, you are beginning from the ground up. Brilliant assumes that you have no skills whatsoever, and it helps you to build a framework for your learning. Now, while there is a huge amount of modules across Brilliant for you to choose from, for me, it's always going to be the math. Brilliant's new maths courses aim to provide you with a solid base in algebra that you can then take on the world with. You will learn calculus and beyond, and not only will you do it in a fun way, but you will also do it in a practical way. So why don't you join me in trying everything that Brilliant has to offer? Get a full free 30 days of Brilliant by either clicking my link down in the description or scanning my QR code here on screen. And by using either of those, you will also get 20% off of an annual subscription, because we all know you'll be coming back for more. Alright, it's time for the books. And here we are in front of one of my main problem children, my fantasy shelves. This is my problem child for a number of reasons, most predominantly that we are on this bookcase only running out of space at an alarming clip, like a hideous velocity. Problem in this bookshelf really lies in the fact that everything is a series. So up on the top we've got an entire shelf of Robin Hobb. Then we have paperbacks, which are mostly first books in a series that I haven't tried yet, and so I don't know whether these are going to grow or not. A continuation of the paperbacks, some of which are more than one book in a series. The end of the paperbacks and the start of all of the hardbacks. And then at the bottom here we have a bunch of paperback series like the David Eddings series, Juliet Marilli, things like that. And another issue shelf at the bottom, which is urban fantasy. Now if you watch my bookshelf reorganisation video, then you will know that we will soon be getting a couple of cubes emptied by taking the special editions off of these shelves and putting them out into some decorative shelves in the hall. That will hopefully allow me to have space to put all of my urban fantasy and all of my sci-fi together on one skinny bookcase. And that will in turn free up this bottom shelf. So hopefully this won't actually be a problem for terribly much longer. But in the meantime, I had to find space for 4 books. And these books are fantasy romance, no less. I know, who the hell are they? This is the Saint of Steel series by T. Kingfisher. They're a series that have been republished with new covers from T. Kingfisher's backlist. And I believe, from talking about the first book in this series, which is Paladin's Grace, in my May TBR, that they are actually part of a wider world which also includes this duology. And although T. Kingfisher does suggest that you read these first, you can read these separately, and that is in fact what I will be doing, because as much as I am a start at the start and read all the way through in order person, I'm specifically in these to see whether T. Kingfisher can save fantasy romance for me. You know I am a massive T. Kingfisher stan. I pretty much love everything that they write, although I do wish that they would just bring out more straight up contemporary horror, and fantasy romance is not somewhere that I live. So I'm hoping that they can tempt me over to the dark side with this series of books. First of these books, Paladin's Grace, follows a perfumer who gets herself into a little bit of trouble with a rough group of people on a dark night and is saved by a failed paladin. Lots of people corrected me on this in my May TBR and were like, he hasn't actually failed anything. But guys, remember, I haven't actually read these books, so I'm only getting my information from what it says on the synopsis and what it says on the publisher's website. And that was their wording and not mine. And even if he was failed, I would forgive him because he knits socks and it says that on the back of the book. So as I understand it, all of these books are loosely connected to each other and we do follow like the couples throughout. And they all have some very different couples in them with some very different types of representation. Now granted, these were originally published in the early 2000s, so I doubt that they'll be as outwardly inclusive as T. Kingfisher's like current work is, but I remain hopeful. And I'm not gonna lie, you guys, I think I am just going to move you over here and see whether these just fit in this gap. This is one of my current Patreon book club series read-throughs. So every time I return a read book to here, I'm just going to be checking out another one. So it's going to be a little while before this becomes a problem. And by the time that it does, hopefully I'll have rearranged a few other things. Sorry if you can hear any crunching in the background. It is this little gremlin getting her fill. Anyway, we find ourselves back down here next to my cobbled together literary fiction shelf. Again, if you watch my organisation video, then you will know that essentially what I have done is I have separated out like middle grade and YA, and that's sitting at the end of this shelf, and the rest of this is what's left of my literary fiction or historical fiction, anything that's not genuinely a classic or a modern classic. And you will also know that I hate it. I hate the arrangement of this, I hate that it's here, I hate that it looks higgledy-piggledy, but I'm kind of over it at this point. It really just do be what it be, and I am moving on with my life. Also, as always, I got a couple of questions about what this is when I did my last reorganisation video. This is an alphabet sign that Harry hand stenciled and painted for me so that when I am shelving books and I inevitably get crabby and overwhelmed, I can just look at my alphabet on this. And we are back down here because I have one book to add to this shelf, which again does not grow very much. These days when I pick up literary fiction, it is almost exclusively because I have seen some like trusted friends rave about it, and that is what happened with this one. This is Blue Sisters by Coco Malors. I read the blurb for this author's previous book, Cleopatra and Frankenstein, and it really very much was not for me, and so I just kind of like wrote them off into they're a literary fiction author that I'm not going to be picking up anything from category. And then a couple of very trusted friends independently from each other went, did you know that this is about a complex sister relationship though? And I was like, damn. Complex sister relationships are win catnip. And so I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And I read the first page and I bought it immediately. This one is about 4 sisters, the Blue Sisters, who, as is the like typical setup for almost all of these books where sisters have to come back together and resolve their differences and stuff, they are all very, very different people and they all live in very different places. One of them is a lawyer who has relocated to London. One of them is an ex-boxer who lives in LA and I think runs a gym. And one of them is like a hard partying socialite who lives in Paris. And really none of their worlds collide very often, but then when their fourth sister, the sister that they all absolutely got on with and had no issues with, unexpectedly passes away, they are forced to come back and deal with her things and her estate and also with each other. Now again, I might not normally choose this kind of book because while I don't mind character deaths, I mean, I am a Red Rising and Game of Thrones fan. I can't really love those things and mind character death. But what I don't like in my books is very sort of like existential meandering thoughts about grief and the meaning of life and stuff, and almost all literary fiction that deals with grief has that in like big degrees. I am told that that is not the prevalent emotion in this one, that it really is about the sister relationship and about all of the like complex things that they've done to each other over the years, and so I said sign me up. But the really annoying thing about this is that this book belongs in a stack right at the very corner. You'll notice that I've got some books turned on their side, and technically it should be right in the middle of that stack, so now I'm going to have to upset all of my apple carts in order to shelve it. Oh, actually, does that mean... Hold on, while we're here, I did not think about this initially, but these books are also going to have to go in here because I have an entire set of romance books. I have another 4 romance books in this stack. I was talking to a friend who absolutely freaking loves romance and knows that I really, really don't, and likes the challenge of trying to hook me up with books that I might like to dip my toe in. Unfortunately, we're 0 for 3 maybe in their recommendations, but when they discovered that I have a thing for cowboys, specifically when we were talking about 911 Lone Star and the absolute wonder that is Judge Rider, I will be taking no comments at this time. They suggested to me that I might like some cowboy romances, and that the sort of like main page turning, in their words, not mine because I have not read these, super trashy but super great romances that everybody is checking out right now is this series. This is an LC Silver series. I can't actually remember what the series itself is called, but they're all something less. So Flawless, Heartless, Powerless, Hopeless, and before you all say it, I know that I am missing one of these books, maybe, I don't know. However, the reason that I have all of these, because you know that I have a rule and I would not usually purchase multiple books from an author that I had never tried before, is because I took myself to the Works to find these, which is a UK bookshop, come other things shop. They do like stationery and stuff like this, and they usually buy remainder books, and so they usually have like the books that publishers can't sell, and they sell them for an extremely reduced price. And recently they've got in much more popular things, especially a lot of romance, and I discovered that they did in fact have all of this series for less than the price of one book. So again, before you yell at me, this whole set cost me less than the price of just the first book on its own. If I don't like them, then I can just pop the whole thing as a set up on Vinted for like the same price and somebody else can get the same nice bargain. But if I do like them, it's a nice solid little investment. So look, I'm not going to sit here and sum up what all of these individual romances are about. You know what kind of flavour of stuff we're getting in here. Just from the back of them, we've got like the town prince and a bartender, 2 childhood best friends, a nanny, and then his best friend's daughter maybe. I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll see what happens when we get there. Either way, I need to also find space for these on this shelf, which shouldn't actually be too difficult because I had this entire hardback book fronted up, so I do have plenty of space. I'm just gonna have to do some alphabetical things to move stuff around, so give me a sec. It's still an exceedingly ugly shelf, but all of the books at least fit on it. Alright, while we're down here, I actually have a few books that A, don't belong in this room, B, are being unhauled, or C, belong on one of the shelves behind me in which I absolutely already know that there is no space available. So let's start with that one. This book is of course Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I bought this on release day, I read it over release night and the day after. I absolutely loved it. Now the reason that this doesn't have a home right now is because The Hunger Games is on one of these shelves here, and these shelves are rammed. These bottom 3 shelves are my sci-fi shelves. There is absolutely no room for even one more book on them. I'm probably just going to pop this one on top of some of my Samantha Shannons up here that are eventually going to be out in the display in the hall. So there won't be any fun shelving experience for this one, and there also won't be any fun shelving experience for this one. This is Once More from the Top by Emily Layden. This is one of the books that I have already read. My patrons picked my April TBR for me, and I exclusively gave them books to choose that were from my 60% spreadsheet, my new acquisitions for 2025, and this was one of the ones that they chose, and I had really high hopes for this one. This one is about a country singer who comes from New England, who has a very like squeaky clean veneer in the press and is seemed to be like quite innocent, sings quite innocent country songs, and in fact that is not her background at all. One of her friends from childhood went missing and was never found, and is of course found at the start of this book, and so she has to like grapple with her fame and all of that kind of stuff whilst also like returning home and doing an investigation and dealing with all of the like secrets from the past. While this is not a tops and bottoms, and I will probably talk about this more in tops and bottoms, I think the comparisons to Taylor Swift are actually very fair. When it comes to this book, it is essentially a thrillery murder mystery thing that feels very Taylor Swifty, whilst also feeling like the author read Daisy Jones and the Six quite a few times and really enjoyed it. And while it was absolutely fine for what it was, there was nothing like massively objectionable or anything like that in here. It was just also very forgettable, not for me, and quite twee. So this one isn't being shelved because it's leaving my library. Next up, I have an interesting one. Technically, this one should actually be getting shelved in my thriller shelves over here. However, the other one of this author's books is actually horror / dark academia / thriller, and it's down on my horror shelves because that's really how it hit me the most. And I don't really want to be splitting up authors between bookcases if I can at all prevent it. T. Kingfisher is the one big exception because I'm not going to put like fantasy romance down on my horror bookcase, especially not when they're pastels. But this book itself I think should really belong in my thriller section, and instead it will be going downstairs with its little horror-y friend. And that book is The Vipers by Katie Hayes. This is a Waterstones edition, and while I'm very like appreciative of special editions when they're books that I'm excited about but not particularly feral for them just as an object, I will say that this particular book, this edition, is absolutely freaking stunning. Like, it's gorgeous, and I'm really happy that I have it, particularly because I absolutely loved Katie Hayes' debut, and so I'm very excited that this is going to have the same sort of ominous and oppressive atmosphere as that one. Also, this one feels very sort of appropriate if you want a summer thriller because it's set in Capri, and like up until this week we've been having weather where I would be like, yeah, I want to read about stuff set in Capri. This one is about Helen. She was 3 years old when her mother took a very unexplained, terrifying tumble off of the cliffs next to their home in Capri and died. There were apparently no witnesses, there was no suicide note, and there was no reason for her mother to be there, so her death was just unexplained. Years and years later, Helen is being absolutely suffocated by her family. They are extremely wealthy, extremely connected, and they like to keep all of their chickens very much in the coop. But not only does Helen want away from her family, she also wants to solve her mother's murder because she has suspicions now, all these years later, that somebody in her family was responsible. Together with, I think, their housekeeper, definitely an employee, she is like quietly putting money away for an escape, but she doesn't just plan to escape, she plans to blow the doors off as she escapes. Again, The Cloisters was very claustrophobic, very ominous, very creepy, one of those books that kind of like settled into your bones, and I'm really hopeful that this one is going to be more of the same. Finally, another book which is absolutely definitely going down onto my horror shelves because it is indeed actually horror. We have got Little Red Death by A.K. Benedict, and again, this is an absolutely beautiful book. So the tagline on this one is Once Upon a Time Like You've Never Read Before. This is about a police detective, which again, if it was just straight up crime, I would not be reading because I don't read crime or like murder investigation-y things. They just don't do it for me. With the exception of stuff like Poirot and Marple, I'm just very far away from reading crime books at this point. This is not crime, it is horror. It just happens to be a police detective, and she is dealing with a really baffling sort of like series of murders which are all completely unexplained and have no connection to each other, and which the press has decided to dub the Grimm murders, as in the Brothers Grimm, Grimm, because every single one of these deaths refers in some way to a fairy tale. And while I'm not going to read you any more of the blurb, I do want to read you a little bit of what it says on the back, because it has, "Dearest reader, once upon a time, right now, someone was going to die." And then it goes on to say, like, at the end, "Writers, like cats, murder thousands every year but get away with it. They leave bodies, breadcrumbs and red herrings for readers to gather in baskets, yet nothing is done to stop them, which is why I have one locked away right now. Of course, if you were a really good reader, you'd be able to solve this case and save the victims, give them their fairy tale ending. To do that, though, you'll have to enter the woods. Bring your basket. I'll be there, waiting for you." Does that not sound like something that is right up my alley? I think so. Oh crap, there's one more horror book. I thought we were about to move on to the thriller shelves, but alas, no. The last horror book that I've got here is actually a proof. It is One Yellow Eye by Lee Radford, and it comes out in July, so not too long to wait if you're excited for it. I don't know how I feel about this proof cover, I'm not gonna lie. It's creepy as hell and I'm not really an eyeball fan. This one is about Kesta. Her life is completely ruined when her husband is one of the last people to be bitten during a zombie apocalypse. She spends most of her days in a grief group with other people who have lost friends and loved ones, but the difference between her and everybody else in the grief group is that she has a secret, and that's that Tim's not entirely dead, or at least she doesn't think so. And currently Tim is tied to a bed in her house, and she has promised him that she's gonna find a cure. I am both very excited for this and also very not excited from the point of view of another book about another type of pepperoni, but I have high hopes, so I shall report back. Okay, so we're now moving back to my thriller shelves, which have some hidden tarot cards, so I'll just remove. I've totally kept this place clean after my last video, what do you mean? And for these shelves, I have 3 separate books, which is actually fine because these shelves have a lot of room to expand right now and I am none too worried. Now, the first one is in fact a finished copy that I was recently sent from a publisher, and while I would not normally pick this book up, this one is very much a case of putting my money where my mouth is. This is Wife by Charlotte Mendelsohn, and it is a queer domestic thriller. Now, you guys know I have told you 100,000 times that domestic thrillers are not really where my joy is. I don't really take that much pleasure in a book that can essentially be solved by if you two just broke up and never spoke to each other again, none of this would have happened. Like, just kind of put on your big girl panties and deal with it. However, one of the things that I have moaned and whined about for a really, really long time is any kind of queer representation in thrillers. It is a genre that I generally feel like is maybe like 4 or 5 years behind the rest of publishing when it comes to some of the representation that they have in their books. And for me specifically, I am always looking for fat representation, age representation, and queer representation in thrillers. And so I couldn't really say no, because it is sort of like everything that I've been complaining doesn't exist. And I'm also particularly intrigued because the blurb of this one and everything that I know about it is literally just this little paragraph on the back, and it says, "Dr. Penny Cartwright is everything that Zoe Stamper is not. Glamorous, sophisticated and openly gay. When they begin a passionate affair, a lifetime of wedded bliss seems within Zoe's grasp. But this is not a love story. It's the story of how love can bring about disaster." So even if it does end up being a throwaway thriller, I am hoping that it is at least a fun, queer throwaway thriller that I can actually recommend to people who are looking for more of this. Next up, we have a book that I am absolutely swinging from the lampshades about. I am so freaking excited. And that is because it is the latest Ashley Winstead. It is this book, Will Bury Me. I love Ashley Winstead. I started out with The Last Housewife, and every time I've picked up one of her books, I've just absolutely devoured it. So when I read the premise for this one, I did a very undignified little squealy squeal. This one is about Jane Sharp, and when her father dies very unexpectedly and in not great circumstances, she joins like a sleuthing network, so armchair detectives who want to solve cold crimes, and she completely throws herself head first into this. But while all of the cases that she has worked on in the past have been cold cases, when a new case happens, like right next door to her, the internet goes crazy and Jane finds herself having up close access that she never thought that she would have. And then of course the thing that made me extremely excited about this one is at the end of the blurb it says, told 1 year after the astounding events that left the world reeling, Jane tells the true story of the Delphine massacres. Now, I love me a book with a protagonist who has lived through some stuff and is taking us back through the twisty turns of everything that has happened. That is very much like Ashley Winstead's Comfy Place, and so I am delighted to be returning there. And then finally, the last book that I have is a bit of an interesting choice for me because it is a thriller, but it is a thriller about a missing child, which is again one of the types of thrillers that I tend not to pick up very often. Unlike domestic thrillers where I'm just like, I hate it here. Missing child books just don't really do it for me. It's just like not my thing. However, I have been meaning to try something from this author for a really long time. This is Nothing to See Here by Susan Lewis. And Susan Lewis is extremely prolific, like startlingly, terrifyingly prolific. And I have never picked up any of her books, but I see them everywhere all the time. And so I was finally like, okay, when the publisher offered this, I was like, it's my chance, I'ma take it. And this is another one with a very sparing little blurb, which for thrillers I absolutely love because too many of them have things spoiled, which otherwise would be like, oh, gasp, big reveal. For the sake of like selling it to you, I want the mystery. And all this says on the background is 16 years ago, 3 people were murdered at Kellen Manse and 1 girl disappeared. 10-year-old Amelia was never found. Now a podcast turns its attention to the killings and asks the question no one ever answered. Who did it and is Amelia still alive? And there's a lot of like interviews and like interesting formats in here, so we shall see. And we shall also see where they fit. Alright, so before we finish up with one graphic novel and the non-fiction shelves, which we know that there's tons and tons of room to grow on, I first have a little bag of goodies to show you to celebrate the new on-stage retelling of Romeo and Juliet. I'll link all of the details down below if you want to go and check it out and get yourself some tickets. But the lovely people over at the Play's PR sent me this gorgeous bag, and in it they included this gorgeous little copy of Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. Now you guys will have seen it, these editions before. They are the Pan Macmillan Collector's Library editions. They have like gilded pages, these gorgeous end papers, and they usually, yes, also have a little ribbon bookmark. They sent me this super cute poison keyring, which is going on my keys stat. And then one of the things that I'm the most excited about, because I really need one of these, is a brand new water bottle. It is matte black on the back, and on the front it has poison with Romeo and Juliet. Again, if you want to check out any details about the play, all of the links will be down below if you are a Shakespeare fan. Okay, so here we are next to the non-fiction and also right at the bottom of where my graphic novels live. Now I will admit there isn't a terribly large amount of room for any kind of graphic novels to grow down here. So this is The Girl in the Galdurium, which is book 1 of Lightfall, and it was bought for me for my birthday from my lovely friend Helen. So this is about the pig wizard and his adopted daughter Bee, who live all the way out in an enchanted forest, and they live in peace and harmony until one day his daughter meets somebody called Cad, who is from the race of Galdurians who are meant to be completely extinct. Cad has come to the pig wizard for his help because he believes that if anybody can find his missing people, then it's the pig wizard and Bee. Okay, I'm giving up. Very pretty, and the illustration is absolutely gorgeous. It reminds me a little bit of the colour palette and the kind of feel of Garlic and the Witch, which we know that I absolutely adore. I will be happily adding this to my collection, and hopefully this will be a really easy win for my 60%. Alright, so realistically, would it be nice to stand up and show you all of my nicely organised non-fiction shelves at this point? Yes. Am I, however, very tired and my body says no? Also yes. We're staying on the floor for this little stack of non-fiction, which is the end of the haul. First up, I have 2 books that I have already read and really enjoyed. The first of those being Owning It. This one is subtitled Our Disabled Childhoods in Our Own Words, and it is a collection of accounts of being disabled in childhood and how different people coped with that from a collection of authors. It's edited by Jen Campbell and Ellie Catchpole. There are loads of people that you will recognise in here, not just BookTube's Jen Campbell, but also authors like Elle McNichol, and there are influencers like Jessica from Jess and Claude. Thoroughly enjoyed this. It's extremely emotional. I'll talk more about this in my tops and bottoms, but this is one that I would absolutely recommend, especially if you have any young people in your life who are dealing with their own disability journeys. And then next up, in a very, very different vein, another book that I have been highly anticipating this year is Notes to John by Joan Didion. This is a collection of diary entries in letter form that are specifically written to Joan Didion's husband. Some of them were written long after he died, but some of these sessions Joan actually attended, and so it's kind of thought that Joan Didion used this sort of way of writing to Joan as a way of just like getting her thoughts about the sessions down on paper. You've heard me talk about Joan Didion a few times this year, and after reading this absolute travesty earlier on in the year and it taking literally like 2 months to get through because it was so bad, I was really excited for a sort of undiscovered Joan Didion. There is a little bit of controversy about this one because of course Joan Didion was dead when this was published, and there was no sort of conversation with Joan Didion about publishing this work, but it is thought that she did essentially leave it there where she did for people to find it, and that it was in a kind of like ready to publish format, and that she has talked about a lot of the things that she talks about in here in a lot of detail in other places, and I really, really loved it. But again, it is quite a hard-hitting book. Speaking of hard-hitting books, this is a book that I had seen on tables in Waterstones for quite a long time, and I just kept like skimming by and thinking, oh, not right now, I don't know if I'm in the right place for it right now. And then eventually it was in a buy one get one half price, and I had my excuse and I picked it up, and that one is Munis by David Peace. This was about a 1958 flight which left from Munich airport and which crashed very, very shortly after landing and killed, I think, almost everybody on board. I do think there were a couple of survivors, but I might not be reporting that correctly, so don't hold me to that. But on board there was the young Man United team, the Busby Babes, who were like the kids club for Man United at the time, and they were all killed along with their coach. And this is kind of the story of that plane crash and of the community afterwards. I've read a few different things like this over the years that come sort of like in the true crime social justice vein, although every time I read a book like this it absolutely destroys me. I have also really enjoyed the experience of seeing how these communities rise up around these horrible things that have happened, and so I am excited to get to this one. And because it's on my 60%, there's a good chance that I won't just leave it forever and ever and ever. And then the very last book that I have got to shelve for this video is this one. This is Affairs by Juliet Rosenfeld, and it is essentially about the emotional science, the psychological science behind affairs and why people have them. Juliet Rosenfeld is a psychotherapist, and so she is exploring different cases where people have come to their therapist to be like, why am I like this? Or conversely, this thing was done to me and I don't know how to contextualize it in my life slash perhaps go on with the relationship afterwards. It's another one of those books which on the surface appears maybe a little bit niche for me to have picked up, but this was something which deeply, deeply affected my family in some like bedrock ways when I was growing up. So like many other things like adoption, like complicated sister relationships, like that kind of stuff, it's something that's directly impacted me in my life, and I've always been left a little bit fascinated by it. Very, very excited to receive this one in the post, and you better believe that I had to put it down immediately. Every time I've let myself flick through a couple of pages of it, I've almost been sucked in, but right now I can't because I have other commitments. That is everything, guys. Those are all of the books that I have hauled that I need to show you. I am very, very excited by the fact that they are almost all on my shelves already. If you got this far through the video, then leave me an achievement emoji, like a trophy or a medal, or maybe the like muscly arm, for the fact that we have consistently kept this up through 2 videos. As always, please tell me if you have read and liked any of the books that I've talked about here today, or even if you have read and hated any of the books that I've talked about here today. We love opinions here. And as always, if there are any books here that have sparked your little brain boxes off where you're like, oh, I have another thing that Wynne will really love, then please also let me know about that down in the comments below, because we are nearly 6 months through the year and I think I am pretty much over half of the books that I would like to buy in this year. My roster is filling up quickly. And also please tell me what the last book was that you picked up, because I always like to hear what you guys are buying. Don't forget to check out Brilliant. You can click my link down in the description below or up here to get 30 days completely free to try out Brilliant for yourself. And do not forget, you will also get 20% off of an annual membership if you sign up with any of these 2 methods. If you are new and you want to see how I got on with any of the books that I talked about here today, or, you know, if you just want to see if I keep my shelves tidy for a long period of time, then hit that subscribe button down below. And if you are a returning subscriber who's giving me gentle head pats for putting all of these things away instead of leaving them in big piles like I usually do, then hit that like button on the way out, because it really does help my channel. And I will speak to you guys really, really soon. Bye!